Hello students, welcome to my lecture. In today's class we're going to see about Ronald Regan and realism. Realism is a ideology or a foreign policy followed by Ronald Reagan. He was a 40th president of United States of America. So let us see about his policy of realism. In this lecture, we will be seeing both domestic as well as the foreign policy of Ronald Reagan, because we can't say just realism alone. Okay, so we'll be covering both internal and external policy of this president. The structure, these are the contents we want to see during this lecture. The first slide I'll be explaining what is a realism or the concept of realism, and then we'll be seeing a short biography of this 40th president of USA, and then what was uh, the job done by Ronald Reagan before becoming the president, and then his idea of government and democracy, and then what are the domestic policies introduced by Reagan, and the foreign policy, how he maintained a relationship with the foreign countries, and what was the role of Ronald Reagan in melting or ending the Cold War, and then conclusion. Let us get into this presentations one by one. Yeah, realism. So realism is nothing but is a representation of how things really are, or being practical and facing facts. So in during the previous lecture we saw Jimmy Carter and the policy of moralism. I said in a wonder expression, moralism or maintaining neutrality or maintaining a liberal approach with other countries is not suitable one to American foreign policy. So he's slightly different from Ronald Reagan. Was not slightly, he was totally different from the ideology of the previous president, that is Jimmy Carter. Okay, so if there is an urge of conflicting with their enemies here is the Russia or whatever the country they're following the communism. Okay, so ideological enemy. Okay, so whoever is crossing their way, America will stand for their stand on their own ideology. So that is what believed by Ronald Reagan. Okay, so it is not just like that saying maintaining a morality with other countries. Okay, so realism. So Ronald Reagan followed the policy of realism. Of course, he was also maintained a sort of neutrality with the opposite parties, whoever crossing their ideology, like Russia also. Of course, even during Ronald Reagan period only, the Cold War not came to an end absolutely. Of course, he tried his best to end the Cold War. He did a lot of many things to maintain the equilibrium between Russia and USA. He fought with Russia not by gun, not by any warships, not like that, not exact war, but he fought the Russia with raising arms, strengthening the army of USA. So in that context, he developed the ideology of democracy and capitalism, and he confronted the communism as well. So I hope you understood what is realism. It's just a representation of how things really are and being practical. Okay, so this is the realism followed by the president Ronald Reagan. Let us have a glance of a short summary or short biography of the 40th president of United States. So his name is Ronald Reagan. He was born on 6th February 1911. Okay, he was also into terms of office like the previous president, Jimmy Carter. Okay, his office time or his tenure was 20th January 1981 to 20th January 1989. Okay, and he died in 5th June 2004. Okay, about the Ronald Reagan, a short summary. He was a former actor and also a governor of California. He has served as the 40th president of USA. So he raised in a small town called Illinois, and then he became a Hollywood actor in his 20s. So he was a very famous actor before becoming the president. Okay, and he belonged to a Republic Party. So he was a Republican governor of California from 1967 to 1975, and he has dubbed the great communicator and affable Reagan became a popular two-term president. He cut taxes. Important things comes to mind while talking about Reagan was he done a lot of good things to the a lot of internal policies to America. Like he cut the taxes, but for cutting taxes he was criticized a lot by the opposite parties. Okay, this is a summary, let's not go in depth. Okay, he cut the taxes and he increased the defense spending and negotiated a nuclear arms reducing agreement with the Soviet, and it was credited with helping to bring a quicker end to the Cold War. So he maintained an equilibrium. He In order to reduce nuclear arms, he maintained, he had signed some of the agreement with the USSR. So by signing the treaties, he tried to reduce the nuclear arms usage by the USSR, or the so-called Russia. So with that, he was able to reduce the tension of the Cold War, and he was died in 2004 at the age of 93, and he was affected with the Alzheimer. Okay, Ronald Reagan, a governor of California. So I already told this. Before becoming president, he was served as a governor of California state. So in his younger age, in early stage of his adulthood, he was a member of Democratic Party. So he changed his party when he grew up. Okay, so and even he had campaigned for a Democratic Party as a Democratic candidate. While growing up, his view grew more conservative over a time, and in the early 1960s, Ronald Reagan officially became a Republican. Okay, so he changed his ideology. Okay, and he changed his party as well. Okay, he became a Republican. When he was a president, he belonged to a Republican Party. Keep it in mind. Do not confuse a Democratic Party. Okay, when he just entered the politics, he was in a Democratic Party. After years, particularly in the 1960s, he became a Republican officially. Okay, what in Jimmy Carter's time we saw, okay, he was a person believing in liberalism and moral ideologies. Okay, coming to Reagan, Reagan's focus on the government is so real, so practical. That is why his ideology was called as a realism. Okay, he was not believed in spending much on office and clerical works. Okay, he don't want to spend more on government expenditures, but he wanted to increase the defense system. He wanted to increase the nuclear power projects. Okay, he wanted to develop not arms race. He wanted to do more for a scientific advancement. Okay, Reagan's focus of the government. When he became the president, he gave a speech like less government is best. That means he wanted to reduce unwanted spending or unwanted expenditure of the White House. He was meaning that government. Okay, for government, he don't want to spend unwanted expenditure. That was his primary ideology. And second, he wanted to, whatever the party's president may come, they may be a Republican, they may be Democratic Party, but their idea must be to combat with Russia. Okay, to um, to defeat Russia, or to cut down the policy of communism. Okay, so he also wanted to end the end or um, he also wanted to defeat Russia. He wanted to end this Cold War, not battling directly, but he built up the American defense system strongly in order to conquer the communism. So to conquer communism, he built his army, he built his defense system more stronger. Okay, to combat with Soviet competition, he built his defense system. Not did not waged a war directly. Okay, so this is the ideology of Ronald Reagan. He want to